Rosamund, thank you again for accepting my invitation.
No, thank you very much. You've been trying to reach me for quite a while, so
Yeah,
thank you very, very much for coming down.
no, I thank you for accepting. So we're just gonna start like with the interview straight away.
Okay.
So can you explain your story a bit to our audience and people who are listening to it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My story has evolved as time has gone on. When I first started looking into this issue, I'm always very honest with people. I wanted to find out the reason why my daughter had suddenly become incredibly ill and subsequently dying. And in 2014, when sadly she had passed away, the first inquest at the end of it, it said the triggers for her asthma were something in the air.
Okay.
And it didn't say exactly what, and I think it would be disingenuous of me now to say, oh, it's about air pollution and things like that. No. She was allergic to things like trees, hay fever, which a lot of children have, hay fever and things like that. And I knew it wasn't that. And I also knew as a teacher, there had to be a reason or an explanation why you have a healthy child and suddenly they become very ill. And it was through investigations later on that the whole air pollution came out of it. But in the beginning, we just wanted to find out why.
Why? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And can you tell us what type of character Ella was? Or?
Oh goodness me, yeah, she was a firstborn, which is really important for you to know that. Firstborns, a lot of firstborns are very good at most things they do, and she was like that. She was incredibly sporty. Even when she got asthma, she continued to play football, continued to swim, continued to dance. Obviously not when she was in hospital, but she was incredibly active. And also, what I now know, she was incredibly fit. If she wasn't, then the amount of times they had to resuscitate her, she would never have made it. So I now appreciate how fit she was. Probably at that time I was like any normal mother, I was just worried about her all the time, and I wasn't thinking about that. But now I do accept, goodness me, she must have been strong, not just physically but mentally as well, to go through what she went through. Absolutely.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah.
Well, yeah, she was very bright.
Yeah.
We never talk about that. We always talk about her sporting side because I think it's just to prove to people how fit she was. But she was incredibly intelligent. I mean, when she died at 9, she had a reading age of 14. And although she was admitted to hospital lots and lots of times, it never really affected her in school. So not really. So she would obviously go to hospital and just rejoin them where they were and would carry on as if she'd never been away. So her schooling wise, academically, as much as she went into hospital, it never really affected her. And those days when you were in hospital, what people don't know is you also have a teacher, or some hospitals have a school, so you do keep up with your schoolwork when you are well enough to carry on. So although you might not be in school, you're still working in the hospital. So it never really affected her, no.
Okay. And after your daughter's death, you started Ella's Roberta Foundation.
Yes, that actually, the idea came from one of the top respiratory consultants at Great Ormond Street, Dr. Wallace. The idea of the charity actually came from him. I mean, I was a teacher, I'd never ever set up a charity, but he had been on some charities before. And the charity was set up, it was based in Lewisham here, because he wanted the children of Lewisham to benefit from it. So the idea of the charity came from him. And in the beginning, because I'd never set up a charity, some of her doctors actually helped me in setting up the charity. So we launched it a year after she died on what would have been her 10th birthday, and we got registered status in the summer. And it's something I'm quite proud of because it takes a long while to set up a charity, and we set it up quite quickly. But one of the reasons why we set it up was to also educate the public about asthma, and I always hope that I continue to do so, is to promote research into asthma, and I really hope we continue to do so. The only thing that has changed about her charity was when we started, air pollution wasn't much of a focus in 2013-14. But we actually realised as time went on, and especially as we discovered what had happened to her, we added air pollution onto it. So that's the only real change, her charity. But we've stuck to the objectives. It's about education, it's about raising awareness.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've changed that much from the original objectives.
Yeah, like you said, you started the foundation to raise awareness, create awareness. And do you get any help from the government at all?
No,
Any
but
support?
no, but then they will probably. I better say this on record. They'll probably
Yeah.
say I haven't asked them, so I better be careful what I say. No, but I don't know of any. It's something that, as time goes on, I believe that there needs to be a whole awareness campaign about awareness, not only about air pollution but about asthma. And I'm going to say that now, especially last week, the number of asthma deaths.
Yeah.
that are still going on. So the number of asthma deaths has risen substantially since my daughter died. So I definitely, and not just me, public health, the medical doctors believe that there needs to be a whole education about asthma. When you speak to the general public and you tell people that people continue to die from asthma, they seem surprised, especially if they don't have asthma in their family.
Yeah.
We have one of the worst asthma death rates in the EU still, 2019. So there's so much more that needs to be done. And as we discussed much earlier on, it also disproportionately affects people in the BAME community.
Yeah.
So to me, there's a whole program of education and awareness, because we're not just talking about people becoming ill, sadly. We're talking about people dying.
Yeah.
So there's a whole education that needs to happen around that.
Yeah. So so it's 6 years later now, 7 years.
It's coming up to 7 years
7
in February.
years, yeah.
February, so not quite, but yeah.
Yeah. So 6.5 years.
Yeah, that's correct.
So the judge apparently has agreed to make a new inquest.
Yeah.
Well, in your case, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's thankfully to the Professor Stephen Holgate. He looks into her death, and it's based on his medical evidence. That's why they've quashed the inquest, and they've asked for it to be re-examined. And what it's going to be about is to look at the contribution that air pollution plays in her death. I'm not able to tell you how much, because it hasn't happened yet. But we now know exposure. See, that's another thing I've learned. Exposure to air pollution is very damaging, and especially for young children who are growing up with their lungs that are not fully formed yet. So what we're going to be looking at is the amount that air pollution contributed to her death. And I'm not able to answer that yet, and it's not something I'm prepared to be drawn on. The evidence will go to court and it will be examined, and you can come back when it happens and we can take it from there.
Great. So all that time has passed. Do you think there is a raise, or do you think there's more awareness around the topic of air pollution at all?
Among certain groups of people, yes.
Okay.
Amongst the general public, no. And what I mean by that is everybody. I find in the environmental movement, some are well informed than others.
Okay.
What I mean by that is people are not told.
Yeah.
So I will always go back to being a teacher. I believe that if you educate people about things, they will know. And the only reason why people don't know is because they don't know about it. It's not because it's difficult. No. I believe there needs to be a whole awareness campaign, especially the amount of deaths, that I believe the money will be well spent.
Yeah.
And also the amount air pollution affects the National Health Service. And what I mean by that is we now know air pollution affects all the major lungs in the body, and it has been linked to so many things: coronary heart disease, strokes, dementia, asthma, some forms of cancers, low birth weight. So if you look at all the things that air pollution affects, they must spend millions on that. So rather than do all that, just take, I don't know how many million to do a raising awareness campaign.
So you said something very interesting about the BAME and the POC, people of color community. Do you think they are the first, or is it like to 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 be exposed to air pollution? What do you think about that?
Yes, because we know, or research has shown us, when it comes to poor housing conditions, when it comes to, so a lot of, when I talk about urban cities, so I talk about Birmingham, Manchester, all the London, obviously, we know that most of the air pollution there comes from diesel cars. And also, what we now know is a lot of people who live by the main roads are the poorer communities, people from the BAME community. So they are adversely affected. I'm not saying that they are the only ones living near the main roads, but as you know now, we've talked about housing in London. Even if they are living there, or even if a white family is living by the main road, not everybody can afford to move.
Yeah.
So poorer communities live near main roads and things like that. So obviously they are more likely to breathe in. I always go on about the huge lorries that bring food to our supermarkets and things like that. My thing is, can they not at least be done in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Right, that's one of my sort of, I'm sure someone will have an answer to that question. But when you live on a main road and you see these massive lorries go past all the time, goodness me, it must be a sight to behold, actually. Yes, there are little things we can do, but I was talking to my friend for today, and I tend to try to not lecture. So you hear people say, oh, we need to take public transport more, but you and I live in a country where yesterday, again, we heard from the government that train fares are going to go up.
Yeah.
And the amount they're going to go up, we know yet again the poorer people in the community cannot afford to go on trains. Now, if you watch this and then you go, what do you mean? It means you're not one of those.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
So if you would give a definition of sustainability, what would it be to you?
Well, so sustainability in my head means something long term that is viable. And it's, you and I have discussed for today what companies and other people need to do for the long term. I do believe, because of the impact, and I'm not talking about climate change here, I'm talking about air pollution. I think air pollution now affects every part. Look, it affects everybody. We know it disproportionately affects young people. We also know it affects the BAME community. So to me, we need to come up with things which are long term. My issue with decision makers and policy makers is they always think short term. So something that's going to be a quick fix now, but nothing long term. And I have to say here, in case nobody's heard about it, is I always say that my daughter was one of 27. So there are 26 other families out there like us. But the fact, last week, shocking figures, that asthma has gone up by 33% in the last 10 years of deaths. Not asthma, people have got it, but asthma deaths have gone up by 33%. We seriously need to look at the reasons why.